how do we impact youth? How do we help instill patience? We know already that adolescents in particular, but young people, they already have a challenge with regulating emotions, that their brain is developing, that physiologically things are happening. So how do we help them do what we've talked about, slow down, be present?
I think working with youth is one of those things that you got to know going into it that it's probably something that's going to grow me. Not so much the individuals I'm trying to impact, at least in the beginning, right? I think most definitely the adolescent phase is such a process, and I think when you've already been through that phase, it's important to constantly reflect on your own adolescence. So you're somewhat more effective the closer you are to not being far outside of your own adolescence, because you can remember some of those things that you did that were unbecoming. But that's helped me a lot, and just to have patience through the process of understanding that there is some frontal lobe development that is delayed in a sense, but we pray that it comes sooner than later. And I think for the most part, their response when they finally finish high school or matriculate elsewhere is, you never gave up on me, right? Everybody else, or you were always there even when it was embarrassing for me, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think that's really good. Like, I think of the kids that you work with, Harlan, and the challenges that they face every day, and how many people have given up on them. And that phrase at the end of hearing them say, "You never gave up on me," that takes patience.
Yeah.
And it helps to know your audience, too.
Yeah.
It helps to know your audience.
Yeah.
You don't have teenagers yet, but I got 4 in my house.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of door slamming for no reason at all. None. Just the door slams, and I'm like, did I miss something? My husband's like, what happened? And then I work with a bunch of college students with Hillel as in my role at Hillel in the Jewish world, and I think it's really interesting because they don't want to be patient, and they feel like it's old school, mom.
Yeah.
So I liked what you said about some other time they're going to say, thank you for being there for me. Or even if they never say it, they will feel it, or at least I'll pretend that it happened and it worked. It's really a cultivation of my own patience as they navigate all these triggers and, I mean, that's a loaded word, but all these different challenges today, and where they're really not, they don't want patience.
So it's really seeing the developmental process for young people too, of like how do we shape, but also have the big view in mind,
Right?
And have the patience to stick with them during that no matter what, I'm gonna be here, no matter what happens.
Part of being patient is letting go of the things that you can't control, and I think in today's world with all the exposure, with the reaction with Google, there's a sense of like, I can, I must, I should, and that sense of responsibility and accountability is great, and there are limits to that, and if we don't recognize our limits or help the kids to recognize their limits, we are going to burn out, and we're going to be frustrated, and patience is going to be the old school way of doing things versus the way to do something that nourishes you.
Right.
And so you mentioned, and I agree that patience is a skill. And I think what's coming up for me is like maybe skill is still something that you use. It's still something that you do.
Yeah.
And I think patience is a way of being more so than...
That's a beautiful distinction.
It becomes a part of who you are.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a part of
its
it's a
identity.
virtue. It's a character thing
Yeah.
that you have to it's something in your soul texture that you have to grow, as opposed to, I do tennis, I do soccer, I do patience.
It's not just a good psychological habit.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, we talk about that in our research too, about how you need a narrative or a story of your life that says why it's important to do these to be this way, right? I need, and I think, and we find there's different kinds of patience. So there's patience with other people, which is I think, the hardest one personally. And you actually find that's the most predictive of well-being. So if you're able to be patient with others, but you have also a long-term like life hardships patience.
Yeah.
And then you also have that more daily hassles patience. You find that all of those, they do stick together, and it's really about that bigger picture identity of who am I as a person, and is there a reason to value this attribute of patience? And there's a story that somewhere in there of why this is worth it.
A lot of people come to me as a rabbi is they want to know the end of the chapter and the end of the book before it's unfolded. And I'm like, you're on page 200, but you're actually only in chapter 3, which is on page 32. I'm always reminding people, like, wait for the finish. Wait for the end of the chapter. Start anew. The book's not over. We're not done with the book. The book is over when you're dead. Like, so it really talks a lot about to that narrative of I want to know the end of the narrative. It's that drive to go find a psychic or someone to tell me what's going to happen. Is it going to be okay? Am I going to be okay? Instead of saying like, okay, this is the unfolding of my narrative. Like this chapter. In process, don't know the ending, and I'm not going to skip or fast forward to the end of the book.
And for adolescents and youth, I think there's also a beautiful opportunity here in the way they're developing and changing. It's this time of identity exploration. It's an exciting time of possibilities. But a lot of research is showing that this new post-millennial generation is also the most altruistic. They're searching for meaning. And if we think about patience as connecting to meaning, as well as developing the skill, that becomes hopeful of like, how can we help navigate this and create opportunities for our youth to fight against some of the pressures that they're feeling on the day-to-day, and to use it as a window of opportunity. That's exciting.
And that's the new word. It used to be intelligent quotient, IQ. EQ, emotional quotient. Now there's MQ, meaning quotient, which is what this generation is generating.
One thing as a dad that I think about all the time that is part of my meaning making is I want to create a world that's better for my boys growing up. What role do you think for the future that patience might play, and why is it important for the next generation? Why is it important for your sons?
What's been helpful in my life and learning of patience is having elders, people who have life have taught them many lessons that they can share, and ultimately what we do with our boys, right? You're sharing with them these lessons in hopes that they will take them in and say, oh, this is looking something like what Dad told me about or grandfather told me about. Let me slow down. Let me, go through this gracefully. And I think that's been so beneficial. I was this weird kid growing up. Like, I love hanging around old people. But I was just more intrigued. I was just more intrigued that for someone to be 80-something or 90, I'm like, gosh, so you've been around since what was happening during this? And so they teach you all of these life lessons. So you realize, like, wow, okay, so I shouldn't be so upset about this or that.
Knowing history and culture becomes an important part of learning patience going forward.
There's a beautiful story from the Jewish tradition that I have to tell. A young boy comes by this man planting a carob tree. His name is Honi. Not a popular name now. And he says, what are you doing? Why are you planting this tree? He says, you're never going to enjoy its fruits. You're going to never see it grow. And he says, just as my father's planted for me, so too I will plant for future generations. And the message is very much that we can't desist from the work if we don't see all the products of it, but we can't stop doing it. And so it's not about completing the task. It's about continuing the enterprise. And so I like to think that I'm in the business of planting carob trees that my future progeny's progeny will enjoy the fruit of. And that's good enough.
That's a beautiful story.
You drew inspiration from your elders. You're referring to the future. But I'll draw inspiration from the kids that are here. And I think they're patient in a very interesting way because their patience and their resilience is a form of patience. Like the number of times they fall and they keep getting up, they'll cry, they'll still, come out of it and keep going. And I think that would be the reason for me to cultivate, is to support, is so that we can be resilient And I think kids are very inspiring and wise in that way.
I'm never going to look at a kid again that falls and stands up. I'm going to be like, you're teaching me resilience.
Yeah.
You're teaching me to stay in it.